Okay, so we're practicing the law of signs today. Yesterday we talked about the ambiguous case. So the first thing I need to do whenever I'm looking at these problems is, am I dealing with the ambiguous case of law of signs? So I've got, in this case, they've given me two angles and a side length. So this is not a law of signs problem. For the law of signs, you have to give two sides and an angle, and the angle has to match one of the sides given. So we're going to start off by writing in our information that they gave us. So they gave us this information. Okay. So first, let's start off with the easiest part. We're going to find angle B, and side C, but since they've given us two angles, we can easily find our third angle because all three of these have to add up to 180 degrees. So subtract the two given from 180 and I get 82 degrees for angle B. Okay. Next, since they've given me one of these, this is my ratio I'm going to use for my law of signs for both solutions. So let's start by finding side B. So we set up our law of signs. So sine of 81 over 63, that's my first ratio there, equals the sine of 82 over side B. We cross multiply, so it's 63 times sine of 82 divided by the sine of 81, and B is 63.16. So 63.2. Okay. Next, we're going to find the second one. We're going to start off using the exact same ratio from the first one. So notice this is exactly the same. But now instead of the sine of 82, I'm going to use 17 to find side C. And when we cross multiply here, we get 18.65. So side C is 18.7. Okay? So notice for both of these ratios, the proportions, I use the same initial ratio, that one that they gave us right here. Okay? So the reason you don't want to use B is because we had to round that. And since there's a rounding error, and then that's going to compound. So always use the beginning one twice, okay, for both calculations, whatever it is that you're doing. Okay? All right. Second one. So first thing I'm going to look at, is this an ambiguous case? Do I have two sides and an angle? Yes, I do. Does my angle match one of my sides? Yes, it does. Okay? So this is an obtuse. That means I have either 0 solutions or 1 solution. So I'm going to write down my information. Okay. Now, if you go to our chart, it says if you have an obtuse angle, if A is smaller than B, then you have no solutions. If A is bigger than B, you have one solution. And as you can see right here, A is smaller than B, there are no solutions. And the information they gave us, it doesn't make sense. Because look, 128, biggest angle, right? The bigger the angle, the bigger the side. So look, 54 is smaller than 71, which means angle B would have to be bigger than 128. If you have, even if it's the same, it's going to be over 180 degrees, and that's not a triangle. So if you just think about it logically, since this is the biggest angle, this has to be the biggest side, and since it's not, we can't have any solutions. Okay? But you can just go back to the chart and compare the two side lengths given. And if, again, since this was the angle and side given, this has to be bigger than 71, and it's not, so there are no solutions automatically. Okay? All right, so let's look at our third problem. Okay, again, am I dealing with the ambiguous case? Do I have two sides and an angle? Yes, I do. And these two match, so yes, I am. Is this acute or obtuse? Well, it's an acute angle, which means I could have 0, 1, or 2 solutions. Okay? So for there to be one solution, A has to be bigger than B. So if A is bigger than B, there's one solution. Okay, if A is less than H, there is 0 solutions. If A is bigger than H but less than B, that's when I have 2 solutions. So the first thing I need to do is find my height. So my height is B times the sine of A, and in this case it's going to be 18 times the sine of 52, which ends up being 14.18. And yes, 15 is bigger than 14.18, so we have 2 solutions. Okay, so let's start off. We're going to end up having to find 2 solutions, but let's start off with the first one. Okay, so 52 degrees, 15, 18. So that's what I've started off with. All right, so again, I'm starting off with my ratio that I've got, which is my A information, equals the first thing, the only thing I can find is angle B. Okay, so we cross multiply to find sine B. Sine B, so it's 18 times sine 52 divided by 15. And when you plug that in your calculator, you get 0.94561 something. Okay, now that's not your angle, that's the sine of B. So to find B, you've got to use your inverse trig function, 561, blah, 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 blah. And when you do that, you find that B is 71.016, so basically 71 degrees. So B is 71 degrees. Okay, now remember, just like when we did right triangle trig, when we're looking for an angle measure, we use the inverse trig functions. When we're looking for a side length, we use the regular trig functions. So as soon as I knew I was looking for this angle B, I knew I was using the inverse sign. Okay, and you get this angle. Now that I have 2 angles, I can subtract those from 180, get my third angle, which is 57 degrees. And I can find my missing side C. And again, I start with the same trig ratio, sine of 52 over 15 equals, but this time I have the angle, so this is 57 degrees over C. So I'm looking for side C. And again, cross multiply this times this divided by that. And for side C, we get approximately 15.964, which is basically 16.0, because it rounds up. Okay? All right, so there's my first solution. Now, I have 2 solutions to find, so I'm going to set up my second solution. And again, A, B, C. Side A, B, C. Now, I start off with the exact same information I started with the last time. Okay? And again, let's call this one B1, I'm going to call this one B2. Okay? Because that's what we're starting off with. Whatever side length here that they give me that doesn't have an angle that matches it, that's what you have to find next. If we did the exact same thing we just did and we set up a law of sines using 52, 15, and 18, we'd get 71 again. Okay? So we have to do something different this time. And to find our second triangle, to find B2, we take 180 degrees and subtract what we had for B1. So when we take 180 degrees and subtract 71 degrees, we get our second triangle's B, which is 109 degrees. Okay? So now that I have a different angle B, I have a different angle C, because once again, if I add up these two and subtract it from 180, I find angle C, which is 19 degrees. And now that I have angle C, I can find my last trig ratio. I use the same part here, so again, 52 over 15 equals the sine of 19 over c, and that's going to give me my last c value, and you cross multiply and you get 6.1972788 blah blah blah, which is basically 6.2 for my last one. So this is how you work a two-solution problem. Okay? You set them up exactly the same at the beginning. You solve the first one just like you would solve any triangle. But when you go to solve the second one, that's when here you've got to find the other angle. It's the same sine value in the second quadrant. So you take 180 degrees, you subtract the value you found in the first part to get your second triangle. Okay? So just make sure that when you're doing these law of sines problems that you're checking, do you have the ambiguous case? And if you do, how many solutions do you have?